Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody here to today's meeting of the Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee. I can firstly introduce the top table. On my very far left, we have Councillor Sheila McCall, Vice Convener. Next to her is Councillor Jack Welsh, who is also Vice Convener. Barbara Renton, who's Executive Director of Communities. And on my right here, I have Adam Taylor from Committee Services. Adam, can you confirm apologies, please?
Yep, thanks, Chair. We have apologies this morning from Bailey Ahern, who has been substituted by Councillor Chan, and also apologies from Bailey Brock, who's been substituted by Councillor Cuthbert. I'll just run through. Actually, I'll just ask the members who are online if they can just confirm that they're in attendance. Councillor James.
Morning, Adam. Yep.
Thanks. And Councillor Frampton.
Morning, present.
Thank you. All other members are present in the chambers. Convener.
Do we have any declarations of interest regarding the business today? Not seen anything coming through online, and there's nothing in the chamber. Can we agree the minutes of the previous meeting? So our first item of business, item 4 on the agenda, is a motion brought to the committee regarding the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service cuts. Can I ask Councillor Leishman to move the motion, please?
Good morning, councillors, and thank you, convener. In a familiar story to us in local government, Scottish Fire and Rescue finds itself in the position of having to make drastic financial savings. £36 million worth of cuts will be needed over the next 4 years, including £11 million worth in 2023-24. This is the result of receiving a projected flat cash budget settlement from the Scottish Government. As a result of that underfunding, it would be easy to be highly critical of the Scottish Government and the failings on what they provide to fund our fire service. Rightly, the SNP should be roundly criticised for this, but this is not the time for councillors to politically point score and be distracted from the thing that actually matters. That people from every community in Perth and Kinross will be in danger if Perth's fire service is reduced. Buildings will be destroyed and lives will be lost. We must also not fall into the trap of merely talking about numbers and balance sheets. It's convenient to do that because numbers and paper are a more palatable way of attempting to justify cuts, but cuts have consequences. Currently, Perth has 3 appliances that pump water to extinguish fires. One of these appliances is called the Aerial Rescue Pump, the ARP. Scottish Fire and Rescue Services plan is to reduce the capability of what the ARP can do. From the 4th of September, the ARP won't pump water and will be used solely as a high-reach appliance and will be operated by a reduced 2-person crew. This means that Perth will lose a water pumping appliance and be reduced to having just the 2 appliances that can extinguish a fire. We are going to go from 3 appliances that pump water to 2. There is no way that this can be seen as anything other than a reduction in service. In Perth, we currently have 68 operational firefighters. This is going to be reduced to 63. Like the removal of a water pump appliance, this is another reduction in service. And the ripple effect of reducing appliances and firefighters is far-reaching. In the first instance, the negative impact is on the firefighters that go to work and keep us safe. It's already an incredibly dangerous job. Combating fire or performing height or water rescues is physically demanding. There have been recent studies that highlight the physical health implications of being a firefighter. Nationally, we are seeing a downward trend in the number of cancer deaths in the general population, but the opposite trend is happening amongst firefighters. Firefighters are more likely to die from heart attacks and strokes, and the cancer mortality rate is 1.6 times higher than normal. As well as these physical health demands, there is the considerable mental and emotional strain of dealing with trauma, death and destruction. I've spoken with many firefighters, and it's the camaraderie among the crews that holds the service together. The Fire Brigade Union have already commented on the service being hollowed out with a 15% reduction in staff in the last decade. Having less firefighters means that firefighters have to do more. That means putting themselves in more danger because they will have less colleagues out on the watch. If we put ourselves in their position, when decisions are made, like losing an appliance, then extra demands are put on you. When you and your colleagues are already stretched, with the service operating on the goodwill of firefighters because you aren't given adequate resources to do your job, then it's completely understandable that morale is low. Then there are the consequences of reducing the fire service on us, the public. The public will have to wait longer for firefighters to arrive on scene, crews will have fewer firefighters on shift, and communities will ultimately be less safe. Budget cuts only serve to endanger people and buildings. In Perth, we are all too familiar with tragedy. It was only in January this year that the New County Hotel went on fire. Keith Russell, Sharon McLean, Donna Jans van Rensburg and her dog Joey all perished in the incident. 11 others were treated for minor injuries, 2 people from neighbouring properties were evacuated, and more than 60 firefighters were involved in tackling the blaze and trying to save lives. Then, just 2 months later, Slavomir Schmeichel tragically died in an explosion at the Shore Recycling Centre. Mr. Schmeichel's family said that he was a husband, father, brother, son and friend, without whom our lives will never be the same. It isn't scaremongering to ask how many more lives would have been lost at these incidents if we had this proposed reduction in service. And to their credit, the Fire Brigade Union have been vocal in protecting their members and the communities they serve. They are right when they say, it doesn't matter how the fire service butter this up. These are significant cuts, and we as a union are under no illusion that very few mothballed vehicles ever come back onto the front line. The likelihood is these appliances will be removed indefinitely. Now, I appreciate that our role is to scrutinise the local fire service and that ultimately it will take action from the Scottish Government to overturn the proposal. But if we as a council don't make efforts to open dialogue with SFRS decision makers and passionately put forward and make the case for not reducing our fire service, then frankly, we are not doing the job we were elected to do, to fight for our residents' interests and that of all our communities. So fellow councillors, I'll conclude by leaving with a likely scenario that details the potential consequences of cutting our fire service. You can substitute the 2 places in my ward that I mentioned for places in your own. A young family's home goes on fire in Letham. The mandatory 3 pumps attend because it is a dwelling house fire with persons reported. That's the 2 water pumps we will have in our fleet, and the 3rd appliance will now have to come from Dundee or elsewhere as the ARP doesn't pump water anymore. At the same time, a fire breaks out at a family home in Tulloch. We will need more firefighters from Dundee or elsewhere to respond to that fire. The response could be 5, 6, 7 times as long. Dundee is the closest appliance that can be relied upon to turn out, as there is no guarantee that retained firefighters will have a crew. With that massively longer response time, the fire uncontrollably rages. It spreads into neighbouring properties and numerous homes are destroyed. People succumb to the heat and smoke. Multiple lives are lost. Families and communities are absolutely shattered. While all the time, the ARP that has had its water pump capability removed sits in Perth Station. That is the result of having less firefighters and less appliances in Perth. The public will be in grave danger. This is wholly unacceptable, and with proper funding, it is wholly avoidable. There is absolutely no doubt in my mind that there will be a negative impact on firefighter and community safety. That surely cannot be disputed, and I hope everyone can support the motion for us to have dialogue with Scottish Fire and Rescue and for the case to be presented so the cuts to fire service in Perth are withdrawn. Thank you for your time.
Councillor Cuthbert to second the motion.
Thank you, Convener. I think Councillor Leishman said everything I was going to say. Just to say that I think it's important we have dialogue, that we talk to people to see what we can do, and I'm fully supportive of this motion.
Thank you. As councillors be aware, within standing orders, because the motion has been brought by councillors, there is no real opportunities for questions unless you want to clarify what the motion actually means with the motion givers. But I will open for a short period of comment, and at the end of our comments I will ask the Police Commander Serge to comment on what the motion is asking. So, Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, convener. I'm fully in support of this motion, as are my colleagues who are not on this committee but who joined the firefighters rally outside this chamber to demonstrate their support against the cuts to appliances and personnel. There are real safety concerns as to what the impact of these cuts will be. What will it mean to the functionalities and capabilities of the fire and rescue services in Perth and Kinross? And what will it mean in terms of mobilisation and responsiveness? And I have to say that communications from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service have been woeful. I think we heard more detail in Councillor Leishman's speech than we've had in total from the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. And we as councillors have been left to gather scraps of information from the local press, which isn't good enough. It hasn't been clear whether the replacement of the combined aerial platform is in addition to the loss of the third appliance. To be honest, I don't even know what the third appliance is. It hasn't been spelt out what is the loss of functionality associated with a move to a dedicated height platform, what capability will be lost, how many jobs will be lost, what will be the personnel changes to full-time and retained fire officers. And I appreciate that at the heart of these changes is the Scottish Government budget and their gross financial and economic mismanagement and skewed budget priorities. And while we can express solidarity with the firefighters and support for their campaign in this chamber, that campaign needs to be taken to Holyrood. And I said that to the firefighters that I spoke to outside. People in Perth and Kinross are rightly concerned about what the loss of the fire appliance will mean, particularly for response times to fires in remote parts of our area. And the Scottish Government needs to face up to the fact that the fire service is being forced to make these decisions because of the restrictions placed on their budget. And I fully support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, convener. The proposed operational decision to remove an appliance from Perth has potentially serious consequences, not just for Perth, but for other towns such as Blairgowrie, our ward, which is a retained station and which may have to rely on support in a major incident. We on this committee know of the dedication of the members of the fire service in protecting the people of Perth and Kinross, often putting themselves in harm's way to do so. And we know, of course, that sacrifice has been considerable in the past. Therefore, they need and should have all necessary equipment to fulfil that task. I appreciate that this decision has not been taken lightly and statistical information has been used to support the decisions made. However, as the saying goes, past performance is no guarantee of future success. None of us know what the future may bring, and public safety should not be at the mercy of statistics. Convener, I'm happy to support this motion, but let's be clear, the situation is not the fault of the fire service. They have a budget shortfall of 36.5 million. It rests with the Scottish Government, who would tell us that they commit millions to the service, but no matter how many millions, it is obviously not enough. We live in the highest tax part of the UK and have a government which has received record levels of funding from London, yet we seem unable to support our emergency services. First the police with so few police officers, and now the fire service having to sacrifice essential equipment. Just on Monday, the national newspaper boasted that Scotland supplied more foreign investment and aid than the UK and Europe. That's not good enough. It is the first priority of any good government to ensure the safety and security of its citizens and its emergency services, in this case, our fire service. On that point, Convener, I'm finished, but since we have so many fire officers present, I would like to stand up and simply say, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Craig.
I think councillors before me have summed up pretty well, I think, what all of us are feeling. And again, I'd just like to say a massive thank you for all for your service, but also for being here today, because I don't think at the moment the public are as aware of the changes that are coming as they probably should be. And it's you guys being out there and then being able to see it that is going to really make the difference. We in here can express, how frustrated we are and our, dissatisfaction at it. But in reality, it's the people on the street that are going to be able to push Holyrood into making those changes and, making sure the Scottish Government really support you guys in the way that they should be. So, yeah, like I think Councillor Barrett has said to you outside, I think pushing Holyrood and making your presence felt in public and at Holyrood is incredibly important. But thank you for coming today. And we hear you, and we will, I'm sure, be fighting for you as much as we can. But ultimately, it's them that need to make the change. And thank you again.
Councillor McCall.
Thank you, convener. Firstly, I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, because I think everybody knows what a fabulous job our firefighters do. And I have indeed supported them through their FPU on other matters in the past, and I will continue to do so. But I want to address the motion and just to give some reassurance to the mover and the seconder that certainly on this committee we're acutely aware of the issues that have been raised and the concerns that there are both within this chamber and the wider council and among the public. And at the last meeting we had with the Fire Brigade Union ahead of this meeting, we did suggest, or I offered, that we could hold an all-councillor briefing with the fire service management and all the councillors, and that is on the table. Some dates have been offered to them, and hopefully they'll come back to us because of the urgency of this. And I know everybody's got a busy timetable over the next week or two before the recess kicks in, but we've offered some dates to them in the next week or two where all councillors will get the chance to address some questions directly to those. So hopefully they'll take that up in that, and hopefully that will reassure members on this committee and in the wider council that they us as conveners and vice conveners do indeed understand the gravity of this situation and have been in dialogue for some time. But I think it's right to open up to the wider councillor group. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's plainly obvious that the committee as a whole unanimously supports the motion brought forward by Councillor Leishman, and we do seek further reassurances, further information, further guidance on the changes and what's going to happen going forward. Can I ask Commander Serge Kabamba if you could? Oh, sorry, I wouldn't have summed up if I'd seen it. There you go. I'm sorry, I'm not going to take those two extra comments. I've started finishing up, so I just repeat myself. So can I ask Serge Kabamba if you could please comment on the motion and whether you accept this committee's view that there should be a wider meeting. There are 40 councillors of this council, a lot of them within the city centre, who are not on this committee and wouldn't have the opportunity to ask you questions without this sort of brief agenda, and whether you confirm that any actual meeting would actually still be in the public domain as this committee is. Serge, I think you're still on mute, sorry.
Yeah, it was greyed out. Thank you. I believe Jason Sharp, who's area commander for PCAD, is looking to come in just to make a statement on the motion and also clarify the meeting that has been offered to all members.
Thank you. Sorry, Serge, about a misunderstanding here. We're expecting. Oh, Jason on mute, was he?
Thank you. I couldn't unmute myself. It's locked out automatically, I think. So thanks for unmuting me. I absolutely acknowledge the comments and the motion that's been passed, convener, and thanks to elected members for their comments following that as well. I think what I'd like to lead in with is the timing of the need to balance our budget has absolutely prevented the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service from engaging with yourselves as we would have wished to do so. And as quite rightly stated, Serge has put some dates round to host a session with elected members and council officers as required, where we will come and speak with our planning team and explain and describe the process and take questions to give assurance on how we made our decisions and answer any questions you see fit. Just a reminder to the group, in November last year, our Chief Fire Officer, Ross Haggart, presented to and was scrutinised by the Justice Committee around the financial challenges presented by the resource spending review and flat cash settlement budget in regard to the impact for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. Mr Haggart was clear and publicly acknowledging that the budget challenges were likely to affect our operational delivery model. He gave assurance that any changes would be data driven, based on risk and demand, where community safety would still be our top priority, and this still remains the case. You may recall that we had a service delivery model programme which was established in 2019. This was looking at our footprint, our duty systems and our delivery model. This was planned to deliver by 2015, which with any changes would have followed full public consultation. However, due to the budget pressures, as stated from Councillor Leishman earlier, for 2023 and 24, the strategic leadership team, supported by our board, approved the temporary withdrawal of 10 bolting appliances across Scotland, one in Dundee and one in Perth, which was described earlier. Meanwhile, we've established a 4-year strategic services review programme, which will be seeking to achieve the required savings across back office and, where necessary, frontline services over the next 4 years, with an absolute focus on ensuring that we deliver our priorities as set out within our 2022-25 strategic plan. In particular, our outcome to ensure communities are safer and more resilient as we respond effectively to changing risks. So just a reminder that we have recognised, acknowledged the timing needed to balance our budget prevented us in speaking to yourselves and engaging with you as we would wish. And I urge you to come and supply the dates for Serge and myself and our planning team to come and talk this through with you. Thank you, Kabir.
Regarding the mover of the motion, are you content with the response and the setting up of a meeting as requested in your motion?
Thanks very much, Convener. I am, yes. And is it a pertinent time just now just to make a very, very small comment? I appreciate the time that you extended to me and the committee did earlier on. I'll be very quick. Thank you. Appreciate that. Since 2011, Perth has had a third water pump appliance. This was justified before we saw the growth of Perth and surrounding areas. With the concerns we have regarding the lack of housing in urban and rural areas, firefighter decontamination issues that we have previously heard in this committee, the lack of retained cover, especially in northern Perthshire, and the pressing climate emergency, as a third appliance needing to be sent from Dundee or potentially even further away will have a negative environmental impact, and the creation of the CTLR that is coming. The need is greater now than ever before for that third appliance. And I would like to thank committee members for their support for the motion, and I hope we will have cross-party representation in speaking with SFRS. And I appreciate Councillor McCall and yourself organising a meeting, and I look forward to attending. Thanks very much.
Thank you. I think, as I say, we'll get Democratic Services to liaise between the fire service and councillors to arrange a date for this meeting. I've been informed from committee services, though, that unless this is a meeting of a committee or a public meeting as itself, it won't be held in public, even though that's what we still wish. We'll take that forward. I'll speak to Provost as well regarding, because we could have a special meeting of this committee, but it would be the members on this committee and it would exclude the other councillors from it. So we'll work something out with Provost and Democratic Services. So, yeah. Yes. Yes. Right, so we move to item 5 on our agenda, which is outstanding business statement. Do we have any questions or comments regarding the outstanding business statement? Thank you, gentlemen. Ladies. Can't see any comments on the outstanding business statement, so I will move on to item 6, which is the police and fire reports. The first part of that is the Scottish Fire Services end of year performance report. I can ask Commander Serge Gabamba to introduce this report, please.
Good morning, everyone. As you'll be aware, this is the first 6-monthly Perth and Kinross performance report, and you'll note that the report format has been revised. So I'd welcome any feedback on that should you feel appropriate. I trust everyone has had the opportunity to review the report and our local performance over Q3 and Q4. And if I can take you to page 5 of the report, I'll provide some additional detail around our performance. HI1, there were 44 accidental dwelling fires reported within the reporting period. Fire damage at 20th instance was reported as limited to item of ignition, and 3 to the room of ignition, which required a hose reel or CO2 extinguisher. Of the 44 properties, 25 of those were fitted with smoke detection, of which 18 operated to give early warning to the occupants. And the main factors and contributing factors were cooking and drugs and alcohol being involved in 5 of those. HI 2 and 3, it's pleasing to see there was no accidental dwelling fire fatal casualties, and there were 13 non-fatal casualties during the reporting period. The total number of accidental dwelling fires continues to decrease in the long term, and we're currently reporting our lowest number of fires for this reporting period over the last 5 years. And this is as a result of community safety initiatives delivered through partnership working. HI4, there were 19 non-domestic building fires, which reflects an increase over the previous period of 11. 6 incidents resulted in minor damage, 1 involved the whole building, and 1 limited to the room of origin, and 11 with no damage caused. At 4 of these incidents, firefighters extinguished the fire using main jets or hose reels. HI 5 and 6, unfortunately there were 4 non-domestic fatal fire casualties and 6 non-domestic casualties recorded during this reporting period. This was as a result of 2 notable incidents within Perth. Our thoughts are with the family and friends of those affected by these tragic events, and I'd also like to thank our partners for their assistance in dealing with these incidents. Our fire safety enforcement officers undertook 54 audits during this reporting period supporting businesses, and there were no enforcement or formal notices issued to any business within Perth and Kinross. HI 7, we attended 45 road traffic collisions during the period, and that was to assist with scene safety or to extricate occupants trapped as a result of the collision. Of the 45 incidents attended, 13 required technical extrication to release casualties. HI 8 and 9, of the 45 RTCs that we attended, there were 3 RTC fatalities and 36 non-fatal casualties from within the Perth and Kinross area. Within Perth and Kinross, our on-call volunteer stations at Kinlochranna, Kirkmichael and Glenshee have recently been upskilled and undertaken road traffic collision operator courses and received powered rescue equipment, which enhances their capabilities and allows them to be mobilised in communities. We continue to deliver through education the Young Driver programme, and the introduction of VR headsets have provided an immersive experience to road users around road safety. Input has been undertaken at local secondary schools and HMP Perth, with feedback to date being very positive. This programme is a replacement for Safe Drive Stay Alive, and the new equipment and material allows users to experience the aftermath of an RTC until extrication. AHI 10, the SFRS mobilised to 346 unwanted fire alarm signals from a total of 633 false alarms during the reporting period. Following the UFAS stakeholder consultation from 1st of July 23, the SFRS will no longer mobilise the EFAs from a single smoke detector within non-sleeping risk premise unless a fire is confirmed. This will reduce mobilisations within Perth and Kinross, providing opportunities for reinvesting the release capacity into areas that would deliver greater value, such as upskilling, training and further prevention work. HI 11 and 12, there were 7 deliberate primary fires reported within 3 buildings, including hospitals, care homes and residential flats. 2 involved vehicles and 2 outdoor structures. There were also 35 deliberate secondary fires reported. No trends were identified and incidents were spread across all ward areas. We continue to utilise a targeted approach, working with schools along with national campaigns during the summer season to reduce this unacceptable antisocial behaviour. The continual input with regard to deliberate fire raising is delivered alongside other safety programmes across Perth and Kinross. And we have seen across all deliberate fires a reduction from 61 to 42. Our firefighters continue to train in all aspects of their role and gather operational intelligence on local risks to assist in an emergency and ensure they are operationally prepared. We continue to deliver face-to-face engagement within our communities to ensure we can continue to help those most vulnerable, and we've seen a large increase in partnership working and continue to provide support in local initiatives. Within Appendix 1, you'll note there's been a number of community safety engagement initiatives undertaken within Perth and Kinross. This is just some of those that have been undertaken. Firefighters have been working with representatives from Perth and Kinross Council and partners to improve water safety within Blairgowrie, with the introduction of new water safety boards and throw lines at Sir William Macpherson Park. This accompanied a water safety event which was held on the 1st of April with Police Scotland, Tayside Mountain Rescue, Perth and Kinross Community Wardens, SAS and Blairgowrie and Ratley Community Council, and it allowed members of the community to learn how to use throw lines and CPR. Perth Fire Station also held its first emergency service day, where we were joined by partners. Over 1,000 people attended the event, and visitors undertook activities such as the VR goggles, viewing appliances and equipment, meeting crews and trying on PPE. But it was an excellent opportunity to ensure the community continued to receive home safety advice. On to Appendix 2, some notable incidents from within Perth and Kinross. We attended 1,052 incidents within Q3, Q4, one of those being the New County Hotel. Crews were met with a well-developed fire on the second floor of a hotel. The incident escalated to a level 3 response with 14 appliances attending from across Tayside, Fife and Aberdeen. Crews rescued a number of residents from upper floors using ladders and quickly extinguished and searched the smoke-logged building. Unfortunately, as I referenced earlier, this incident resulted in 3 fatalities and a number of injuries to residents. Sure recycling. This was a fire involving approximately 200 tonnes of scrap material, which had spread to adjacent buildings. Again, crews from across Tayside and Fife were required at this incident, with 9 appliances and supporting vehicles remaining on scene for approximately 48 hours. Unfortunately, this incident also resulted in a fatality due to injuries sustained. And the final notable incident is with regards a rescue at Cluny Power Station, Pitlochry. Specialist crews, including swiftwater rescue teams from Perth and Stirling, and a line rescue team from Lochgelly, attended a gorge rescue incident where a casualty had fallen approximately 40 feet down to the river's edge. Boats were deployed from downstream, and crews, with the assistance of Scottish Ambulance Service Special Operations Team, the Dundee Trauma Team, and Police Scotland, were able to effect a challenging rescue. That concludes the brief on the report itself. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much for that. We have some questions coming in already. Firstly, we'll have Councillor Cogalli.
I'm just wondering whether we can have an update on the investigation into the New County Hotel fire.
Unfortunately, Councillor, that incident is still under investigation. Therefore, I would be unable to comment on that at this time.
Councillor Jack Welsh.
Thank you for that update, Serge. In light of the cuts that we've just been advised for and the representation we've had from fire services staff today, obviously the role, amongst other things, and one of the key things for councillors is scrutiny. While this report goes, a significant way towards providing information and data on fire services action and incidents, I think one of my concerns after coming to the station the other day and speaking to you alongside Brian was this aspect of response times, because response times are one of the key metrics that show whether effectively the resources you have in terms of personnel and appliances and equipment are really matched to the demands that you see. What are your thoughts, and is there an opportunity to include response times in future reporting? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. And with regards response times, within the SFRS, we have no statutory responsibility to provide detail on response time. We don't actually, although we record response times for a KPI just to monitor our performance, they're not a legislative requirement. It is something that I'd be willing to look at. It would just depend on how that information was presented, but there may be opportunity to even just for a snapshot to give you a broader overview. However, that's something that I think that potentially I would need to discuss further with yourselves just to see the kind of detail you were looking for.
I think that would be worthwhile, and I'm certainly aware that as part of the Strategic Services Review Programme, which will run for the next 4 years, this aspect of understanding how we scrutinise and to ensure that the people of Perth and Kinross and their properties are protected, I think is going to be very critical. So anything in terms of additional information to allow us to do that would be helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. I've got a question regarding page 10 of the report and unwanted fire alarm signals. The pie chart at the top of the page gives a number of all false alarms, of which UFAs constitute 55%. Is the other 45%, are those all nuisance or malicious fire alarms, or is there what's the makeup of that 45% and other key components within that can be targeted?
Okay, so within page 10, the pie chart you refer to, the false alarms is the total number of false alarms I've received from all building types, that being domestic and non-domestic. UFAS itself only refers to non-domestic. So that will be commercial buildings essentially, or larger properties. So of the 633 false alarms that were received, some of them will be private dwellings, for example, which don't fall into the UFAS framework. But of those 633, 55% do, and those are the ones that can potentially be reduced out with sleeping risk.
Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener, and thank you for a good report, which obviously reflects the good work with, I think, only 3 red arrows on it, sadly, to do with casualties. I just wondered, on the 3 RTC casualties, were they on that excellent black spots that we know about, usually A9, A93, or were they in other areas?
The 3 fatalities were on the A9, that's correct.
So it's usual black spots then?
Yeah, we tend to, that tends to be the highest risk area for us within Perth and Kinross with regards RTCs on that A9 corridor.
Thanks.
I don't see any other further questions. Can we move to comments? Any comments on this report? Councillor James.
Thanks, Convener. Serge asked for comments on the report, or feedback would be welcome. Can I just say the performance summary, Serge? I really like the layout of that. Easy to read, simple, straightforward, and I can only apologise. While we're talking, this is what I wanted to say earlier, is while you guys do a fantastic job, your hands are often tied justifying your existence to other people. These reports are, huge reports, and it is appreciated, but the simplification like you've done here is fantastic. Thank you.
Yep, thanks, appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Councillor James, for those comments. I don't seem to have any other comments. Oh, so thank you very much. Thank you for your time, gentlemen. And we'll move on to item 2 within this part of the agenda, which is the Perth and Kinross Local Police Area End of Year Police Report. Can I ask Area Commander Tom Leonard to present the report, please? Assuming we actually managed to get you online.
So, morning. Thank you, Convener. I'm Superintendent Ian Wales. I'm representing Chief Superintendent Phil Davidson, who's on his annual leave. I'm responsible for the day-to-day operational policing in Tayside Division. So I have got Tom Leonard with me. He couldn't get logged on to his own computer, so he's had to join me. So we're sitting side by side through in Perth today. So in terms of the policing report that Tom's going to cover today, just to confirm, this covers the period right up to 31st of March 2023. However, it focuses on the year-to-date data from 1st of April 22 through 31st of March 2023, and against the comparable period, not only from the previous year, but against the 5-year average. As previous quarters, I'm sure Tom and Phil have both said, continue to advise members that the impact of the coronavirus still has an impact on year-to-year challenges due to the varying levels of restrictions that we saw during the between 2 and 3 years of the pandemic. This report that we're presenting today will be the last performance report as we know it as now in the current format, as we'll be moving into the new format from now on. I trust the members have had the opportunity to read the report, and we'll not go over it in detail. Tom wants to make some comments and draw out some highlights for you, and then once Tom's done that, we'll both be happy to take any questions. So over to you, Tom.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and apologies again for the IT issues that we've had this morning. Just in terms of the report, it is our end of year report and fairly lengthy and contains a significant amount of data, which I don't propose to go into in great detail, but just in terms of some of the key areas for ourselves from the report and from our performance in the last year, If we start with violent crime, thankfully we've seen no increase in the number of serious assaults that we've recorded this year, and our detection rates, which were challenging at the start of the year, as per the presentations during Q1 and Q2, have continued to improve throughout the year, are now higher than both our divisional and national averages. Again, as we've discussed at previous meetings, the start of the year saw particular challenges for us in terms of the number of robberies that were recorded. Focused activity that's been carried out both by our CID and also by our Partnerships and Preventions Unit has allowed us to stem that increase, and we actually end the year with a marginal but welcome reduction in the number of robberies that we've recorded. Our detection rate for robbery does remain lower than last year, but it is higher than the divisional national averages, and a number of the crimes that were recorded last year remain under active investigation. In terms of violent crime, we continue to see common assault as one of the main drivers for the overall increase in occurrence rates, and I would just highlight to the committee one trend that we observed during the reporting period, which was concerns around violence between pupils in school settings, but also out with school on settings such as public transport, etc. We became aware of that and quickly convened a working group along with colleagues from community policing, community safety, and the wider partnership, including education. And that's worked really well in terms of dealing with that issue. And in addition to our investigative response and our normal engagement through our schools liaison officer, we continue to work with those partners with the Short Life Working Group, which is developing additional guidance to support staff and to inform our future response to incidents. I think for me, it's a really good example of the strong partnership working that exists in Perth and Kinross that's allowed us to identify that trend and take really quick action to remedy that. Moving on to acquisitive crime, you'll recall that we discussed the challenges that we had around about theft by housebreaking. Generally speaking, for occurrence rates, acquisitive crime in Perth and Kinross remains below the national average across all crime types, but domestic housebreaking does remain a key priority and a challenge for us. We continue to see evidence that the crimes committed in Perth and Kinross are actually perpetrated by criminals who travel into Perth and Kinross from out with this area, and the report contains a number of examples of successful investigations where those crimes have been detected and enforcement action has been carried out against those individuals. I would just highlight in terms of acquisitive crime another area of concern, which is theft by shoplifting, and we did see a significant rise last year in the level of recorded crime. That's not just a trend that exists in Perth and Kinross, but it's replicated across the division and nationally, but it continues into this current performance year. We are doing a lot of work with partners, again including community safety and with retailers in Perth and Kinross, and we recently attended a meeting which was attended by a lot of retailers from Perth city centre, a very productive meeting, and we're working with them and with partners to develop an action plan to address that issue, and any learning that comes from that will obviously be rolled out to the other localities in Perth and Kinross. On a positive note, vehicle crime remains lower than last year, and Perth and Kinross is the only area in the division to record a decrease in offences, and our detection rates are above both the divisional and national averages. Serge touched on some of the road safety issues in terms of his update, and again, tragically, Perth and Kinross recorded a number of additional fatalities during the reporting period. As previously discussed this morning, these all occurred within priority routes that were identified, and you'll recall Inspector Burns outlined those in his previous input to the committee. There are no particular new or emerging trends in relation to these collisions, and again, as I say, the majority of those have occurred on the A9, and our focused patrol and some of the driver engagement work that we do along with partners including Scottish Fire and Rescue Service continues. In terms of public protection, again, no particularly new or emerging trends in relation to occurrence rates. The number of rapes has fallen, but we continue to see an overall upward trend for sexual crime, with one of the primary drivers for that being sexual assault. That's perhaps reflective of increased confidence in reporting brought about via campaigns such as Bystander and Don't Be That Guy, both of which were delivered during the reporting period, and other societal changes which have led to reduced level of tolerance for offending behaviour. And as previously reported, almost a third of all of the sexual crimes that are recorded by ourselves are non-recent in nature. So they actually occurred more than 12 months prior to the offence being reported to police. Where crimes are reported, we continue to work closely across the partnership to provide support to victims, and we have robust investigative processes supported by local and national specialist units, and that's reflected in the detection rates, which are significantly higher than previous years. As I mentioned at the start, the full report is lengthy and contains a significant amount of data, but hopefully that provides a kind of brief overview, and both myself and Superintendent Wales are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I have nothing in my chat at the moment. You might get for a record here, Tom. I think you might be going for no questions to your end of your report. I will move on to comments. If anybody has any comments, please put Senior Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I just wanted to thank Tom Leonard for attending the recent meeting with city centre businesses. I'd been contacted by the St John's Centre management team who expressed real concerns about the scale of shoplifting that they were experiencing, and other city centre businesses. We had a meeting which included city centre ward councillors, community safety team, business development team, and the police, local MP and MSP, and about 20 local businesses. It was a really positive meeting, and it wasn't a sort of finger pointing exercise, but I think there were some specific actions coming out of that, and I'm grateful to Tom for taking that forward. Thank you.
I have no other comments, so thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Have a nice rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we now move on to item 7 on our agenda, which is the Education and Children's Services Annual Performance Report. Hazel Robertson's going to introduce this report.
Thanks, Convener. The Education and Children's Services Annual Performance Report for 22-23 is a really wide-ranging report, and I therefore refer members of Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee to pages 97 and 98 of the pack, and also pages 105 and 106, which specifically relate to the performance of the Criminal Justice Service social work teams. The report provides a summary of the key priorities being addressed and details progress against these targets for 22-23. The services experienced a significant rise in referrals throughout the year, and that's resulted in staffing challenges, but despite this, good progress has been made. The report notes that the public protection team and most of the prison-based staff have received enhanced trauma training, and we have representation and participation and a national review of bail supervision, and also been able to introduce a 2-year pilot to improve outcomes for those with drug and alcohol problems. As just noted previously, the repercussions from COVID continue to present a backlog for unpaid work, but this is being actively managed. I have Derek Mortimer and Roddy Ross, the team leaders of public protection and the unpaid work team, present today, and both would be happy to respond to any questions.
Do we have any questions, councillors? If there are no questions, do we have any comments on Councillor Barrett?
Thanks, Convener. I was trying to let someone else in for a change, but my question was on page 105 of the report, and the figures, the indicators on unpaid work hours completed and the unpaid work backlog. I appreciate the commentary saying that it's a kind of movable feast with regard to the backlog of unpaid work hours, but 14,000 seems like an awfully big proportion of a backlog compared to the 16,701 hours completed, and I just wondered whether that does indicate that there is a pressure on the unpaid work team and the need to increase that team.
I'm sure Roddy Ross will be able to answer this question for us.
And I'm Derek Morton. There's Roddy Ross now.
Roddy, you're still on mute. Can you hear us, Roddy?
Yes.
Did you hear Councillor Barrett's question?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't. I was trying to get logged in there. I'm at the Neighbourhood Watch Scotland board meeting this morning. I'm terribly sorry.
It was regarding unpaid work hours. I'll get Councillor Barrett to quickly summarise the question for you.
Yeah, Roddy, it was regarding the target for the unpaid work backlog at 14,000, which seems a pretty significant chunk of the 16,000 hours that are actually delivered. And I was wondering whether that actually indicated that that there was serious pressure on the service at the moment, or whether it was coping.
I think we're coping fine. We've made some adjustments to our staffing levels, and not so much the staffing levels, but just the way we've organised the business. These are not the only performance indicators that we get. These are, part of a suite of monthly figures we look at. We're pretty comfortable at the moment that we are coping with demand. We need a balance between capacity and backlog. And we know our clients are our workforce, and we treat them like that. So we need to have that capacity of people versus the amount of jobs that we've got in the pipeline. So I'm pretty comfortable that we are where we need to be. We keep an eye on it all the time. We've got good performance information. So yeah, I'm relatively comfortable, and we have done just a bit of adjustment just to make sure that we've got the balance between supervision and operations right at the moment. So right now, pretty comfortable, but we keep an eye on it.
You might not be able to tell us this just now, but I wondered in terms of the target for unpaid hours, work hours completed at 20,000, how does that compare to the number of unpaid hours that sheriffs give orders for? I see if you can't tell us just now, then if you can get back to me with that, be.
It's a bit of a moving feast, to be honest, and we're not entirely sure what the norm is now. We've had, I don't really like referring to COVID constantly because we are back in place, but it's, as far as performance management, it's really thrown us because we were developing our performance management system and make sure we understood the business really well. And then, of course, we've had a hiatus and then a difficulty getting restarted. So that number, it wasn't exactly plucked from the sky, but we just don't exactly know what the norm is. We're starting getting back to it better. We don't know exactly what the norm is at the courts anymore. There's been some shifts and changes in policy. So I think, like I say, I'm as comfortable as I can be with the demand. I'm as comfortable as I can be with the relationship we have with the court and the way that sentencing is being carried out. We just need to keep an eye on it. But I think we have the mechanisms there that if anything happens, if there's a significant change in sentencing policy, if it goes one way or the other, that we've got the performance information that will allow us to react and respond pretty quickly. Within we won't knee jerk over a quarter's results, but if it starts to get 6 months, 3 quarters, then we'll be able to adjust our staffing levels accordingly. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I see no other questions. Do we have any comments on this report? I will therefore move the report. Oh, so there we go. Sorry, Sheila.
Thank you. I just want to commend the work of the Criminal Justice Social Work team and the significant effort and performance that they put in on an ongoing basis in the work that they do. I think it often goes under the radar, within the council, and it's crucially important to our overall community wellbeing and community justice work. I'm interested to note that they can submit late reports, and I'm just wondering if perhaps it's maybe an observation that in future reports we can show what the percentage is, including the late reports, so it gives an overall picture. So I think that might be helpful for the future, but otherwise, excellent report. Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. I'm going to move this report now, and doing so comment that the criminal justice team play a hugely important role in supporting people released from custody, supporting them in the community, and helping them to engage, get jobs, and set up well. And there's one of the most important roles and links in with our housing team. And I think it's hugely important, the work that they do. Myself, the leader of the council and the chief executive visited the criminal justice team a couple of months ago, and it was very reassuring. Also noting that Roddy's still really in love with his poster, that is now the backdrop to his team's profile. And we're waiting to see all other services have their posters. If you've not seen this poster, this is one where they've pulled together all the comments and inputs and the relationships between the different parts of their service to see how complex their service is and how everything is linked up, and it's quite a thing to behold. So thank you very much, and could I have Councillor McCall to second the report, please?
Happy to formally second the report.
Now we'd move to comments. It's been a while since I've done this committee. Thank you. Do we agree with the report? Thank you. So item 8 on the agenda is the Community Payback Orders Annual Report. And again, Hazel Robertson to present this report, please.
Thank you, Convener. I'm very pleased to introduce the Community Payback Order Annual Report for 21-22, and you appreciate that's a little bit of a lag. And the report details the activity of the Criminal Justice Social Work team during that period from 1st of April 21 until March 22. It highlights how the service has continued to operate and navigate the unusual challenges we've faced during the pandemic, and commence that process of recovery to ensure that the needs of both service users and communities across Perth and Kinross are met. This annual report focuses on how the service has adapted to the challenges of having to employ different ways of working while managing the potential risk of reoffending and harm from service users. In tandem, there's also been the aspect of service users' mental health and wellbeing, ensuring that the effective support and management of people's health needs does not impinge on their propensity to reoffend. Due to the fluctuation of COVID-19 restrictions, the annual report describes how services, both in community social work and unpaid work, have adapted to the transition to providing meaningful and practical services, whether on a community payback order or unpaid work order. Although this reporting year has presented several challenges, as in previous years, including a backlog in court proceedings, which we've just noted, it's also accelerated the development of innovative ways of working and provided the opportunity to re-evaluate how our services are delivered. While some of these changes in practice are supported by Scottish Government, we continue to seek opportunities to expand our partnership working to address the broader issues in the justice system. And I think the poster that Convener has just described is an example of how that's being done. I'm joined today particularly by Derek Mortimer, who's the team leader for the Public Protection team, and would be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? I've nothing in the electronic chat at the moment. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks. My question was on page 10 of the report, section 8, about drug testing and treatment orders and the disconnect between what the sheriff thought given a DTTO would mean and what actually happened in practice, which seemed to be nothing. So has anything been done to fill that gap?
Apologies, my connection dropped out just as that question came up. So could you repeat the question, please?
Sorry, Councillor Barrett, it's not your day.
I was as if they weren't hearing enough from me already. I'm having to say everything twice. Right. Derek, it was on page 10 of the report, section 8, and the paragraph regarding the evaluation of drug and alcohol treatment requirements and the disconnect between what sheriffs thought happened if they issued a DTTO and what actually happened in practice, which, if I'm being blunt, appeared to be nothing. And has anything been done to fill that gap?
Yes, we're currently running a test for change project. We've got 2 workers now who are doing specific drug and alcohol treatment requirement assessments at the court report stage. Once the court get that report, they're able to make a drug or alcohol treatment requirement with more confidence that direct work will be done with that person. So the 2 workers that we've taken on will actually do specific work around drug or alcohol issues, whichever is prevalent. And they're getting that bespoke service now.
Okay, if I could just follow up, because my heart always sinks when I hear test of change funding for things, because it's normally to test something that actually works, but then never gets mainstreamed. So how long is the test of change going to run for?
It was a 2-year test for change that started probably in about September last year. It took a little bit of time to employ the staff, recruit the staff. So we're looking for that over the next 18 months, I think. And so far, we've got positive results, and I'm pretty confident that we will be keeping this service going.
Thanks very much.
Councillor McCall.
Thank you, convener. I have 2 questions, if I may. The first one is about the Evolve and OWL services, which I think are excellent services. I'm just wondering what sort of long-term follow-up there is with people who attend those services to demonstrate that there's sustainability in their recovery. Thank you.
That is extremely difficult for us to do. We really don't have the resources to do long-term follow-up on people that have been through those services. I think what we probably do is refer to the Scottish Government statistics on reoffending, but also the local policing data that we received earlier from Tom Leonard. In other ways we can look at it, I suppose, anecdotally, both those services have got positive results from people. We are tackling some of the most persistent offenders, particularly with Evolve, and Evolve being a relatively recent development. It's too early to say whether or not we've got reoffending still occurring with the clients that go through that project. OWLS has been running for quite a few years now. There's quite a lot of success attributed to that project, and I would say we've still got a core group of female offenders who return every year that we're well aware of. But overall, the results are really positive. But it's very difficult to follow up long term because resources to do that are very short.
Okay, thank you. Could I ask my second question? My second question is perhaps a little bit more pedantic. I noticed that you did a bench restoration at Broxden, and I just want to clarify if that's the sort of unclaimed ground near McDonald's as opposed to for McDonald's themselves.
Yeah, I'll take that one, Derek. Yes, it's not. We're not doing work for McDonald's. It's there's a as you say, there's a public bench up there, which is a viewpoint. So it's that we've sorted out, not McDonald's.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. I'm very well aware of that area of ground, and it's delighted to see that some work's been done on the seating arrangements there. I'm sure everybody will be very happy who use it too. Thank you. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much. I have no other questions, so I will move the report. I think the report again highlights the importance of partnership working within this area, and it's very good to see that, you know, although COVID brought its challenges, that organisations and systems within our council have actually taken on the lessons that they've learnt, that they've adapted, and that they've taken forward these good methods of working to make that partnership working even better. This report seeks approval for the work being undertaken by the public protection and unpaid work teams in respect to the community payback orders in Perth and Kinross, and requests that we bring a report regarding the activity of this to the committee again in 12 months' time. So I'm happy to move this report. Councillor McCall, could you second the report, please?
Thank you, Convener. I'm very happy to formally second this report.
Do members have any comments on this report? Councillor Braun.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I just really wanted to concur with your comments. We've seen these reports over the years, and the content has always been very much the same. Comments appreciating the work being done, and to some extent those who are doing the work appreciating what they're doing. There's so many in here you can't draw on one, but if I could just pick on one which came to eye. 98% felt that unpaid work had helped them to stop or reduce their offending behaviour, and that I think is an excellent comment. And one of the actual quotes in there says, "Being able to focus and understand about my offending." So I think that's a comment that's worth noting. But an excellent report, and I think the team have done wonders. So my congratulations to them. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Leisman.
Thanks very much, Convener. I will keep it brief. Thanks to Hazel for the report. I'm scheduled to visit HMP Perth at the start of July, and it will be very interesting to speak with people within SPS and hear about their job and what can be done to alleviate the pressures our prison system faces. It was very interesting researching the topic of community penalties and looking at the results that show that they are more effective than short-term prison sentences for reducing reoffending and how they're effective in the rehabilitation process. And reading feedback that said it was life-changing, feeling useful, and hearing of people acquiring new skills and learning reading and writing and realising a sense of achievement shows that change is possible, and it's not just prison that gives a chance of rehabilitation. Having the offender been able to compensate or repair damage and harm caused by crime and turn their own life circumstances around can only improve wider society. And thanks very much, and lots of appreciation to all the staff involved.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have any other comments. Chat? No, I don't. So thank you very much. We'll move on to item 9 of the agenda. So we agreed to move in the report. Agreed. So item 9 is the Community Service Annual Performance Report, and Barbara Renton will introduce this report.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, councillors. This is the final committee on this annual performance reports road trip around various committees. So, but it is still my privilege to introduce the community's annual performance report for the financial year 2022-23. This provides a high-level overview of how the teams within the service have performed over the course of the last year. It gives an update on the progress made on delivering against the improvement actions and performance indicators agreed in last year's report. We set out a number of priority actions last year, which you approved, and this annual performance report provides an update on these, and the final section outlines our progress against those targets, which were also agreed last year. And as outlined within the covering report, it also addresses the work now undertaken with the Chief Exec Service, and Claire Mailer is here to deal with any questions you may have on those areas. The report highlights some of the many positive achievements we have made against those outcomes. This includes the establishment of the Anti-Poverty Task Group, a dedicated financial hardship project with the Citizens Advice Bureau, which supported over 900 tenants in financial difficulties or facing financial hardship, £171,000 of warm spaces funding provided by the council for 85 groups across Perth and Kinross, and just under £1 million provided to support over 1,700 council tenants through the Tenancy Sustainment Fund. We worked with community planning partners and commissioned Iconic Consulting to develop a new town centre action plan for Cooper Angus to address community priority issues. And we also supported Forward Cooper Angus to stabilise its governance and financial position and secure and protect community assets for the future. There was also significant unplanned work across the year as a result of the war in Ukraine and for those seeking asylum. To date, we continue corporately to work with our communities to welcome over 450 people from Ukraine, and we have continued to work with the third sector and community groups to provide support to more than 100 people seeking asylum within Perth and Kinross. However, the report also recognises some of the challenges we still face as a service. These are areas where performance wasn't quite as expected. For example, the housing teams face challenges in providing services to tenants, particularly within the housing repairs service, as a result of national issues such as shortages of trade, materials and the energy crisis. These have resulted in some delays with properties being fixed and available to re-let. But with every challenge, then there are opportunities for solutions. And to address these, the teams have worked hard to implement new approaches and various actions to ensure that these delays and timescales are minimised. This achievement is evident in our void timescale, which is 42.81 days compared to the national average of 67. The number of households presenting as homeless increased by 21% compared to the previous year, and that is in line with, sort of what we're seeing nationally. But the team then have worked, the homelessness team have been working tirelessly to be able to address that by increasing the proportion of allocations to homeless applicants in response to the increased demand. There has also been a decline in tenant satisfaction, which is noted within the report. But to pick that up, then we have been conducting well over 1,000 satisfaction surveys using face-to-face and telephone methodology. And the team are continuing to conduct monthly surveys to gain useful feedback from tenants around what matters to them and use this to determine how we shape our services in the future. And where improvements are identified, these will be reflected in the new corporate delivery and improvement plan as actions for the future. I am grateful to officers across the whole service and to all elected members for supporting us while we continue to make the best use of the resources available. As I have said many times, while we have not got everything right or made the progress we all would have liked during the last financial year, it's not for the lack of commitment, dedication, passion and compassion from officers across the service. I continue to be very proud of all of the work undertaken. We are, Convener, obviously more than happy to take any questions on areas within the report specific to this committee. Thank you.
Yeah, so could we have any questions again specific to this committee, because obviously there are items in this for EIED committee, etc. Councillor Braun.
Thanks, Convener, and I'd echo Barbara's comment. Well, I think we are all proud of our housing service on this committee. I don't think there's any question of that. My question's on page 156 to do with the arrears. We're looking at 11.09%, and I'm just wondering, given the news this morning that food inflation is not coming down, it's stuck there for 2 months, are we anticipating this figure to get worse as the year progresses?
Elaine Ritchie.
Thanks, Councillor Braun. Our arrears has increased slightly as a result of the cost of living and just the challenges that many of our tenants are facing. However, we've put mitigation actions in place where we've set up a centralised arrears team, and our performance has actually improved as a result of that. So it's a focused team that we've put in place and quite a lot of resources in there to support our tenants in terms of financial maximisation. However, we'll continue to closely monitor that and make sure our tenants are provided with all the support that they require.
Councillor Barrett.
My question's with regard to homeless presentations that Barbara touched on. The report says that whilst presentations have increased substantially, the assessments have remained stable, although I think if you look at it, they've increased but not to the same extent as the number of presentations have increased, and there's dramatic increases in presentations in the number of families. So I was just wondering, why is it that the assessments have not kept step with the numbers of presentations, particularly with the loosening of things like local connection criteria as well? I would have thought that the numbers of assessments of homelessness would have increased in greater proportion than the number of presentations.
Alan?
Thanks, Councillor Barrett, for your question. Yeah, presentations don't mirror the number of assessed, because that presentations is everyone that presents as homeless, whereas assessed is once we've done our statutory assessment, and during that period of time we work with the individuals in terms of resolution. So we put quite a lot of support in place, we look at prevention, we work with a variety of services. So that's why the numbers in terms of presentation, anyone can present, that is the numbers that we take, and then we do an assessment. That is our statutory assessment when we've defined that the person is homeless, and we've exhausted all avenues in terms of what we can do to prevent it.
Councillor Kigali.
Yeah, my question's just about the percentage of antisocial behaviour complaints that have been resolved. It's on page 167, I believe. That's a decent drop off from 89% down to 81, and I appreciate that it says the reason for that is that the cases are complex. But my immediate reaction would be what made the cases more complex in the past year to mean that sort of drop off? Didn't we just have a very complicated year specifically on that front, or is that the beginning of a worrying downward trend that seems to be what's happening in those statistics over the past couple of years?
Yep. Disappointingly, we've had a wee bit of reduction in the percentage of time to resolve complaints within our agreed targets. These are targets that we set with our tenants, they're not statutory targets. However, although we've had a slight reduction, we've had actually fewer cases that we've dealt with this year. We went down from over 700 down to over just 500, and that's because of the investment we've put in there. However, although we're dealing with fewer cases, we're dealing with much more complex cases, and the result of that is mental health issues, tolerance levels, the impact of COVID, people just generally unsatisfied with various things and getting along with their neighbours. So we are working quite closely with all our tenants. We've got more staff visible in communities to support our tenants, and we're looking at a range of support services to put in place. We're fortunate to get some monies through the budget motions for intensive support, so we think that would be a potential solution to work with some of the more complex cases that we have, providing that stickability support with tenants that are really struggling to get along with their tenants and neighbours.
Are we expecting those cases to continue to get more complicated then, if that's happened, as a result of what has been a tumultuous past few years? Is that something you expect to keep getting worse, or is something you expect to kind of level out?
I hope not. We are hoping with the support that we're putting in place and working closely with our tenants and all the preparatory work that we're doing before we're putting new tenants into properties as well. So we're doing a lot of work in terms of prevention and early intervention, and we're hoping it's just a blip as a result of coming out of COVID and just people getting back into society and cooperating with their neighbours. So I hope not, but we will closely monitor it with the locality teams.
Peter Barrett, Councillor Barrett.
I'm sorry, Convener, I just realised that the second question I was going to ask related to the environment, infrastructure and deaf people, so I'll waive that.
You can take that off the table. Councillor McCall, for your two questions, please.
Thank you. My first question really is a follow-up to Councillor Kigali's question. Can you clarify if the antisocial behaviour complaints are about our tenants or from our tenants, or both?
It's both. It's not always about our tenants. We lived in mixed communities, so there's private tenant, there's owner occupiers, and all the antisocial behaviour doesn't come from our tenants, so it's a mixture of both.
Thank you. Second question. My second question is about the adult learning opportunities on page 6 of your report and page 145 of the main pack. I'm just wondering, if there's any follow-up with students or young people who have had additional support needs in school. And because you do mention people where English isn't their first language, for example. So I'm just wondering how broad a scope that is in terms of age demographics.
Convener, I can answer that question.
Or is it? No, it's not Fiona. Yes, Fiona.
So the figures that are presented in the report, Councillor McCall, relate to adults who present for a whole range of lifelong learning opportunities through our community-based services. There isn't a direct link between the support that's provided for children and young people in formal education.
Okay, thank you. I'll maybe chat to you separately about that.
Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. Yes, I was impressed by the numbers there for the antisocial behaviour complaints. To go from 700 to 500, that's something like 28% reduction. I was just wondering what had actually been done to achieve that.
So there's been more investment put into the antisocial behaviour team through the housing revenue account, so we have more staff that are visible, and also we've reviewed our approach to antisocial behaviour because it is an area that we're constantly looking at and scrutinising. So there's been more investment, more support. We reviewed quite a lot of our procedures, and our staff are visible in the communities as well in terms of being out in localities so that tenants can approach them. So we're getting involved a lot quicker and a lot sooner and stopping things escalating.
Yes, and the HRA budget accounts of 22, Councillor Barrett brought forward a motion to increase the funding there, and that was then carried forward again this year, as well as part of the consultation with tenants. And there's other funding in our budget this year to tackle groups of tenants where it is more difficult and more complex. So there's more funding there again to integrate with those tenants. And a sort of partnership approach to try and reduce the issues that they may have in the community. I have no further questions coming up here, so I will move the report. This paper is the sorry. What did there we go. You're not trying to submarine me today. Michelle.
Hello, sorry. I've got a question on to do with the rent arrears for the gross arrears percentage. Is there a figure for what percentage of our rent arrears are due to tenants whose rent is paid on time but are in arrears because of the legal agreement to pay rent a month in advance?
We wouldn't have that. We only have current or gross arrears. We don't actually separate out into terms of why tenants in arrears. We only separate out when they're in arrears as a result of universal credit, because what Councillor Frampton's on about is tenants should pay when they take on a tenancy. They're a month's rent in advance. It's a rent deposit. Everybody's required to do that. So we don't monitor that because that's a requirement of their tenancy agreement.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Frampton?
Yep.
You can obviously speak to Elaine offline and get more detail on what you.
Yeah,
I
think I'll do that.
Yeah, that's always there. So definitely no further questions. No, I will move the report. This paper is the community's annual performance report for 22-23 and has been noted as a high-level summary which looks at activity across the whole and a very wide service. To contain all this in what is a easy to digest report, although lengthy, it must have proved challenging. This report reflects much changed environment that several years ago, particularly with the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, the war in Ukraine, and ongoing challenges around asylum seekers. As ever, those delivering the services which fall within the remit of this committee continue to take decisive and effective action wherever possible. Despite the many challenges faced with the growing demand for accommodation and other services, Officers from the Council and with partners have worked hard to ensure that a person-centred, focused response is provided to people displaced from Ukraine and those seeking asylum in Perth and Kinross. As a result, many vulnerable individuals and families affected by displacement and exploitation have been helped to feel safe and welcome. The housing teams have also continued to support our tenants to maximise their income at a time where many households on low incomes are struggling to meet their daily living costs and often find it challenging to pay their rent. The teams have ensured through their new focus approach to support tenants in arrears that appropriate support and assistance is provided tailored to their individual needs. The success of this approach can be seen within the increased rates of tenancy sustainment for tenants, which has increased to 93%. Further support has also been offered to those affected by financial hardship, with more people starting to struggle to pay the bills. Through the winter, the Council will provide funding for warm spaces and warm home packs, and we have established an anti-poverty task force to tackle these issues with a joint partnership approach promoting cash first to increase dignity and reduce the stigma. We also continue to work on the actions of the Local Child Poverty Action Plan and a whole range of other measures. This including an employability team helping parents into work and our housing team supporting tenants through our sustainment fund. Preventing homelessness through our sector-leading approach, Home First, continues to provide positive outcomes for households facing or experiencing homelessness. Like most local authorities, the housing services has also had an increase in homelessness presentations. The hard work of the team has ensured that the length of stay in temporary accommodation and the time a person is homeless is kept to a minimum where possible and significantly below the national average. This is a great achievement for the team and the Council as a whole in supporting some of our most vulnerable. The number of community groups supported to increase their capacity rose across last year as a result of the Community Investment Fund, Food and Security Fund and support to develop community action plans. The Adult Learning Partnership also engaged with over 550 learners in a 9-month period, including refugees, people seeking asylum and those experiencing substance and mental health issues. We are progressing with our transformation work around locality working. Work is underway in Highland Perthshire, Coupar and Letham, establishing multidisciplinary teams that will work in more joined up way with our communities. We will further develop and expand this work throughout the coming year. Each pilot project is taking a slightly different approach, and the learning from these will inform the rollout of this work across all localities. This builds on work also undertaken in Coupar in terms of supporting the development of the Strathmore Community Hub and the development of a new town centre action plan. I'm sure that we will want to join in offering our thanks to all the staff across the service and our partners for their dedication and hard work in making the difference to all our residents and tenants, as well as those displaced here. I'm happy to move this paper. Councillor Well, could you second the paper, please?
I'm happy to second the paper.
Thank you. Do members have comments on this paper, please? I have no further comments. We happen to agree the support. I have a request for a short break, which I was already being suggested from in my left ear. So we'll have a 10-minute recess. We'll be back at 11:15. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is item 10, which is the Community Planning Partnership Update, and Lee Haxton's going to give us an introduction to that.
Thank you, Convener. Councillors, this is the most recent update on Community Planning Partnership activity and covers the period from the last update to committee in March. Sections 4 to 6 provide short updates on 3 key pieces of work, those being the development of a strategic risk profile to support the delivery of the Local Outcomes Improvement Plan, the progress made with targeted locality work in Coupar, including the launch of the new Community Action Plan for Coupar, and the new funding proposals for local action partnerships. It's also coming to committee for approval in a separate paper. Happy to take any questions. Thanks.
Councillor Donaldson.
First of all, thank you, Lee. And I want to ask one specific question, and that relates to 5.1 in the paper, where we refer to Coupar and South Crieff as being areas for accelerated locality working. Clearly, considerable progress has been made in Coupar, but could I ask, and there may be capacity constraints, but could I ask with South Creef what the likely timeline is there and what actions that you may be looking to take? Thank you.
Fiona.
Councillor Donaldson, we haven't begun the work in South Creef yet. Committee members will probably remember that this was, along with Cooper Angus, one of two localities where the Community Planning Partnership committed to doing some accelerated multi-agency working in those areas. The timeline, and we have a Community Planning Partnership Board meeting later this week, at which we'll be reporting further. The timeline hasn't been worked through yet in detail, to be candid with you, and that is for capacity reasons in the team, as you've alluded to. However, it remains a commitment within this financial year. In terms of the issues that multi-agency working will be focused on, again, in detail, I can't give you an answer to that at the moment, but as you and other committee members are aware, there are quite a few changes and things in flux within that community. So there are a number of things we'll be looking at in terms of local economic development, employability, skills, and likely just thinking about the broader strategic priorities in the LOIP, the Local Outcome Improvement Plan, likely health and wellbeing and digital participation as well.
Could I thank Fiona Robertson for that answer, and I look forward to any updates going forward. Could I just say to her and to Lee Haxton that it is important to involve not just uniting Creef connections with the hub at the old bus station, but could I also point out, and along with Councillor Kigali and Bailey Brock, the three ward councillors did put quite a bit of effort into this, but also to consult and to involve the Creef Community Council, which has been re-established. So thank you, Fiona.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. My question is very simple. I don't know the answer to this. I just wondered who the lead officer was in the Cooper Angus area for that action partnership.
It's David Stokoe, Councillor Cuthbert.
Councillor James.
Cheers, thanks, Convener. Again, a very simple one, just for clarity, really. 6.1, Report X, is that paper 12 you're talking about? It refers to Report X, just wondered if that was actually paper 12.
Yes, it is. Apologies, that's clearly an oversight when the papers are being finalised. Thanks.
Yeah, it's not secret papers I've got in the background, Councillor James. It's not anything you're missing with your security clearance or anything. I have no further questions, he hesitates to say. No, I will move the report. This is a short report from the Community Planning Partnership, looking at locality working in Cooper Angus and through local action partnerships, detail which has been presented to the committee today. We asked to note the progress in these areas of work, and I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Welsh, just second the report, please.
I'm happy to second the report. Thank you.
Do members have any comments on the report? I'd be happy to move the report. Note the report. Same thing. Yes, thank you. We'll move on to item 11 on the agenda now, Community Empowerment Annual Report. And again, we'll have Lee Haxton to present that report, please.
Thank you, Convener. Councillors, this is the annual report and summarises the Council's activity around community asset transfer and participation requests. The annual report itself is provided as Appendix 1. The annual report covers the period from 1st of April 2022 until 31st of March 2023 and will be published on the Council's website. The annual report itself is a statutory requirement under Parts 3 and 5 of the Empowerment Act, so we are responding to that. The report itself is split into two key sections. Section 4 summarises the statutory background to the report, and Section 5 summarises the Council's activity in supporting community asset transfer and participation requests in that period. It also outlines areas of improvement and focus for the forthcoming year, including a proposal for using the Community Asset Transfer Enablement Fund to support communities to take on greater control or ownership of council assets. Again, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't appear to have any questions as yet. Councillor Cuthbert.
Yes, thank you. It's to do with Sprout Perthshire. In principle, what it's saying, I think, is that there is a community asset transfer group got a bid together. They're interested in acquiring the property, but because there's an external interest from a commercial bidder, it's going to be going to the property subcommittee in August, it says. And I'm just wondering, I had assumed that a community asset transfer would be best value rather than highest consideration. And I wondered why it wasn't just put through as the community asset transfer rather than being brought to the property subcommittee.
About the process and priorities. I'll get them. Lee, are you able to?
Yeah, happy to take that one. Thank you, Councillor Cuthbert. The situation there is that Sprout were asked and involved in a series of conversations regarding the property in Blairgowrie over a period of months. They submitted an expression of interest in September. We had worked with them for, September 2021 to be clear. We'd worked with them on a number of options and ideas to explore, but no full community asset transfer request was ever received. The property colleagues were then keen to put the property on the market as they were aware of other potential interest, but we informed Sprout that they still had the opportunity to submit a bid if they so wished. But as the property had been marketed by the time they submitted their asset transfer request, the provisions under the Empowerment Act don't apply, so they're considered on its own merits compared to any other bids that came in.
Councillor Bartlett. Councillor Bartlett.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I mean, we've been told previously that we've got a kind of award-winning process for delivering cats, but we just don't deliver any. And you know, there seems to be, you know, a contradiction there. And you know, have we, you know, consulted with other local authorities who do a decent number of cats to see if there's something that their approach that we're not doing, or do we always just find that cats aren't the most suitable vehicle to, you know, empower communities with properties at the end of the day?
Fiona.
Sorry, mic malfunction. Thanks for the question, Councillor Barrett. It's the promotion, I think, and advocacy of community asset transfer that we've been had some praise and accolades for in the past, but community asset transfer is not always straightforward, as you're aware. It is an area where we can and want to do better. There is some budget motion monies which we are working with over the course of this year to step up the pace around community asset transfer. Only caveats to that, I would say, is within the council we have to be realistic about the capacity and appetite of some communities to take on full ownership of a building. Sometimes that's not the most appropriate route, and the report talks a little bit about that. And there are other options that might be more suitable for a community group. And those sorts of discussions, and the example that Lee gave in the previous answer is a good one, can take more time. But yes, we need to step up the pace around this in the context of wider considerations that we have around the council's property estate, and we are committed to doing so.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, just following on from earlier comments there. I think there's a distinction between expressions of interest and potential and actual reality and actual take-up. I think it's important on awareness raising and promotion. So going forward, can I ask, along with what we show on the council website, there have been 4 information centres, it is stated there. What are we looking to do in coming months. And in particular, I remember it was a conference held in Perth. It was Community Ownership Support Service Scotland, COS, the salutation about 4 or 5 years ago. But what was really beneficial about that was it gave a number of case studies and examples, but it brought together a lot of groups so they could swap and exchange ideas. Are we looking to do anything such as that?
We're looking at a number of things that will make the process as accessible and straightforward as possible for community groups, Councillor Donaldson, as well as being absolutely open and upfront about what is involved with a community asset transfer, especially if it is a move to full ownership of a building. Because the last thing we want is for asset transfers to happen, but to then, fall by the wayside in subsequent years. That's not in anybody's interest. Training, as you've alluded to, is key. Some of that, realistically did fall away both nationally and more locally through COVID. But from our perspective, it's really about horses for courses. So different community groups need different types and levels of support. Some are very practiced and experienced and are talking to groups in other parts of the country. And we do have some examples of really, really effective community asset transfers that have happened in previous years. Up in Kinloch-Rannoch is one example. Another one also in Highland Perthshire. For some groups, it's more about getting started and getting the basics right. But our aim is to make sure that the support that we put in place for community groups using the budget motion monies agreed last financial year is used as flexibly as possible to remove the barriers to community groups to taking on and running an asset in their community for the benefit of that community.
Okay, thanks.
I have no further questions, so I will move the report. The Community Empowerment Annual Report sets out how Perth and Kinross Council has supported community asset transfer and participation request activity in Perth and Kinross, supporting community to do more for themselves and exert greater control or influence over issues which they are important to them is key part of what Perth and Kinross offer. And this council's approach to community empowerment. Of particular note are the improvement actions for 23-24, which should enable more community groups to get involved in the management or ownership of council assets. We ask you to approve the Community Empowerment Annual Report for 22-23, and I'm happy to move that. We do so. Can I ask Councillor Welsh to second, please?
Thank you, Convener. I can second the report. Thank you.
Do we have any comments on the report? I'd be happy to agree with the recommendations of the report. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to item 12, the last item on our agenda, the Community Investment and Local Action Partnership. Can I ask Fiona Robertson to introduce this report, please? I'm sorry, Fiona, if you could hold a moment, please. We have a point of order from Councillor Cuthbert.
Yes, thank you, Convener. I want to be reassured that the motion that's contained in this paper is competent. I say that because the decision that was made at the budget setting meeting of the council on the 1st of March said that the £600,000 was to fund projects aimed at helping our communities deal with the cost of living crisis for a better future. And what's contained in this report in terms of the local action partnership funding is to deliver participatory budgeting initiatives focused on climate change. So I want reassurance that that is the same as the cost of living crisis. And if I could have some sort of ruling on that, I'd be grateful.
Yeah. Councillor Cuthbert, this committee's got the opportunity and the remit to oversee the implementation of council policies to fulfil its statutory role in relation to community planning and community empowerment. The local action partnerships, CIF funding and participatory budgeting, sort of are all part of that. I think that in relation to, sort of cost of living crisis, the climate change, all of those are agreed priorities of the council. It will be up to this committee to decide whether they want to, agree whether it's climate change or not.
Yeah, the reason I raise this is that Standing Order 23.1 says that a decision will not be altered or revoked within a period of 6 months from the date of such decision being taken. And the decision that was taken at council was to address this money towards poverty and the cost of living crisis. So I'm concerned that we're actually being asked to change what was decided by full council.
Committee will be aware that climate change is also an equalities issue and impacts on cost of living for fuel, how people support themselves in their home, how they move about in public transport.
I would be happier if the actual wording in here said that the projects that are being identified should address the cost of living crisis. I accept that some of the projects could be to do with climate change, but the focus on this paper seems to be purely on climate change.
I suggest you bring forward an amendment at the appropriate time.
I would do that, but it means changing large parts of the paper.
As the Executive Director has already reiterated that all the local action partnerships have items like community transport as part of their action plans, and that falls under the remit of climate change. Climate change is an extremely broad term and covers lots and lots of different things, and I'm sure that communities and action partnerships will be very flexible and very innovative in how they describe projects to ensure that they can meet such a brief. That such a brief on getting let's say the ball rolling in our communities on community action about climate change is extremely important. As part of our LOIP, as part of our council action plan, and it's part of the the corporate plan that was agreed by council. I think it gives the flexibility. I think it meets what was said during the budget. It just requires a bit of thought by applicants of how they approach their applications.
Yeah, I'm afraid I'm not convinced, but I guess we need to move forward. So I'm not sure.
I suggest if you wish to make an amendment to the paper as it currently stands, then of course you're obliged to do so at the correct time. Can I ask Fiona Robertson to present the report, please?
Thank you, Convener. This report sets out proposals for a further range of the Community Investment Fund. The committee is already aware that we have disbursed nearly £2 million through this fund over the last 5 years, and a new round of participatory budgeting, which we haven't done for a few years, to be delivered through the local action partnerships and appropriate local community networks, with a proposed focus on climate change. Section 4 of the report sets out the background and the history to Community Investment Fund over the last 5 years and some background on participatory budgeting, just as a hopefully helpful reminder, because we've not done it for a few years. Section 5 sets out some proposals for changing how we manage the Community Investment Fund in this round. That's in relation to how we assess and manage applications through an online portal, some of the detail around the proposals for participatory budgeting, including why officers have suggested that climate change, because of the equalities dimension to it and for other reasons, is the focus. It also sets out the proposed funding allocations on award basis and the proposed timescales, and all of that core information is summarised for you as well, hopefully helpfully, in Appendix 1, which is a summary of the key facts. Happy to take any questions, Convener.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Councillor Brown.
Thanks, convener. As you probably guessed, my question is coming down to section 5.2e, and it's the question of why are we thinking of giving guidance to ward panels. Ward panels have always worked independently. They assess an application which is brought in based on the criteria we set. But once that's in, they score and allocate funds at their own thought, independent. Often less funds than actual total applications. So I just wonder why we've now decided to influence additional, give in additional weight, whatever wording you want to put, to guide those ward panels, whereas in the past, and the spirit of the SIF was that they make the decisions, local people making decisions on applications from local groups.
Sure.
Am I on? Yeah. Councillor Bourne, there's no intention in this proposal to tell the ward panels what to do. There is an increased focus, as has been discussed already in this meeting and isn't alluded to in the paper, on focusing community investment funding towards tackling inequality in light of the cost of living crisis, but also in view of the fact that there are a number of other funds that are available either through the council or through other sources, both locally and nationally, that community organisations can apply to. So it's an attempt really to just make sure that we have consistency across ward panels, that ward panel members are aware of that broader context, but it's not to direct them or tell them how they should determine the outcome of applications.
I would add that my interpretation is that it will ultimately be up to the ward panels how they distribute their money. Being reminded of things like socioeconomic difficulties that people are currently having is only just part of the advice given to them, and it is just general advice. That's one that they need to weigh up themselves within their own communities, but it's for each of the different panels in each of the different wards to make their own minds up. This is about, for me, the panel, the community, making the decision on how this money is spent.
For the moment.
Councillor O'Callaghan. My apologies, Councillor Barrett's first, thank you.
No problem, convener. Paragraph 5.3 refers to the previous aggregation of the Perth City wards funding and a debate as to whether that was a good or a bad thing, and comes up with a recommendation to disaggregate this, but doesn't actually provide any reasons why that would be a good or a bad thing, or why it should even be the business of this committee, how Perth City Centre councillors decide whether to aggregate or not. So I was wondering, why has it come up with this recommendation? I know that the vice convener had done some work to do soundings of members, and I don't know what the final outcome of those soundings would be, but I would much rather abide by what my Perth City colleagues agree to do, rather than what this committee decides with members from all sorts of other places, to be honest. So
my view is similar, that it's up to the ward, it's up to the city centre, not so the Perth City, full stop, ward councillors, all those councillors to come to agreement on how they do this. I understand the paper was trying to set out what it would look like in both scenarios, whichever scenario members choose to go with. I think this paper has been not difficult to put together, but the flexibility that's needed within this paper, so that the different circumstances in the different wards and different areas, both within the city and within the rural environment, that we try and make things flexible enough to match everywhere, so that the idiosyncrasies and the different challenges in the different wards can always be met. But inherently, it will be down to the locality to make the decision exactly how things go. That's what we're trying to attempt with this paper. I don't know if Fiona Robertson has anything further. That was fine.
No, thanks, convener. I think you've summarised that very clearly. It's a matter for the ward councillors.
So still an outstanding thing for you to decide yourselves. Councillor Kigali.
Thanks. And my question's also on 5.2E. And if the response is that we're not trying to, influence their decision making in as far as tell the panels what to do, then why is it there? Unless it's to change the outcome, I don't understand why then beyond the first sentence said that's actually included. And I'd just like some clarity on that. If it's that officers and the council aren't happy with decisions that have been made in the past, I don't see why else it'd be in there.
I can accept that it could be read that way. It's not intended to be read that way. It's intended to highlight the priorities that already exist within this council's corporate plan, within the LOIP, within action partnerships, within that moving forward. These are already agreed principles, which is why it's there. But I'm sure we can move further on that with discussion later on. Lee Axton would like.
I think only to add as well that since the last round of SIF, the new corporate plan has been approved by council. So it's to draw ward panels members' attention to the fact that we have a new corporate plan, new set of corporate priorities. And as I said in my earlier answer to Councillor Braun, to just make sure that there is consistency where it needs to be consistent across the ward panels in terms of focusing this money, which is, it's not a small pot of money, but it's a finite pot of money on the projects that matter most at grassroots level. However, deciding that is for ward panel members to determine.
The paper also discusses that the officers will wholly support any application and actually help them gain funding should that funding be available elsewhere. Because I think what we want as councillors is that if the application that comes forward could get funded, and that would be our ideals. We know that that's not always possible because of the popularity of the SIF fund and how oversubscribed it is in some areas. But obviously putting that support from the officers in the background means that these projects may still go ahead, but maybe not through SIF, but through the support of the SIF process, but still get funded and still go ahead. Do we have any other questions? I will move the report. This report sets out proposals for community investment fund and participatory budgeting, showing this council's continued commitment to supporting community empowerment. These proposals build on the success of the SIF to date and provide a further opportunity for local people to determine how council funds are used via participatory budgeting to develop and implement community-led projects to address climate change. We are asked to approve the proposals for delivering SIF and funding availability in 23-24, the disaggregation of the SIF budgets covering in the 3 Perth City wards, and proposals to deliver the participatory budgeting programme and funding arrangements in 23-24. I'm happy to move this report. Councillor McCall, could you second the report, please?
Yes, I'm very happy to second this report. I do acknowledge that there have been some questions raised during this, but the report, I believe, gives the flexibility and the provision within the terms of, or within the report itself, to be able to address any of those issues that have been raised. So I'm more than happy to second the report. Thank you, Convener.
We would now move into comments. I see that we have a couple of amendments. Councillor Braun.
Many thanks, Convener, and I note your comments earlier on to my question, and of course Fiona's comments as well. But the concern is that the wording is here, and the principle of the SIF was that it's local groups who apply for whatever reason within the criteria we lay down, and it is a local panel which make the decision. And I've sat on every panel in our ward, as you know, and always, although chairing it, I have never had a vote, never got involved in discussions. It's a 2-part function. They score an application beforehand, they then discuss it, they may alter their scores, but more importantly, it comes to when they're awarding the funds, because inevitably there is less money than the total amount of applications. And I believe that the principle and the spirit of SIF was that is the ward panel that makes the decision. It's their decision, their allocation of funding. I appreciate the comments you made about this, but to avoid any ambiguity whatsoever, my amendment, which is now up on the screen, thank you, Adam, is merely to delete that paragraph apart from the first sentence, which I think is to do with the criteria of it. So I would, our amendment is to accept the paper as it is, except the 5.2e reads simply, greater emphasis will be placed on tackling inequalities and delivering against PKC corporate plan priorities. That's all that needs to be said, I believe, and avoids any ambiguity towards the board panels, wherever they are. So that's my amendment. I think Councillor James is prepared to second.
Councillor James.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. Very happy to second this. I mean, we're very good at giving people opportunities and then putting lots of restrictions on them. SIF has worked really well. It's the one thing that everybody comments on that the council does well, and it is for local decisions. I think this is a sensible option. I know it was there as belt and braces, and yes, it is down to local members, but the fact that it's in print in the first place will be used at a later date to say, well, you know, you voted it through, that's what it says. So if we take that out, it is a local decision then. So I'm very happy to second Councillor Braun's motion.
Thank you very much. I will now take the terms of the second amendment, which is presented here out of the three, as Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Convener. My amendment is really just to recommendation 2.1 Roman numeral 2 of the report, and basically seeks to reflect the comments that you made, that the decision on aggregation or disaggregation of the Perth City SIF monies will be left to the Perth City councillors. So that would then change to request Perth City councillors from wards 10, 11 and 12 provide a decision on aggregation or disaggregation of the SIF funding. So which I would hope that you could just, I'm not sure, I was hoping that Councillor McCall was going to second it, but she then seconded you, so I'd be Well, it may well be, Sheila, but the actual recommendation is to disaggregate it. So, you know, I think there's a contradiction there. So perhaps Councillor Leishman might be willing to let Perth councillors decide.
Thanks very much. I'm inclined to go with what the proposal is in the paper in regard of the aggregation / disaggregation.
Any member of the committee can second this amendment. Yes.
I'll happily second that motion or amendment.
And Councillor Cuthbert, you have your own amendment separate, and I take it it's not on the same subject of the amendment that you just seconded.
It's not on the same subject, which is why I can second his motion. In principle, this relates to my question at the start of this. What I will do, I've just tried to extract what I'm intending and put it in the chat. But in essence, in section 5.8, there's a paragraph that says, where does it start? It is therefore proposed that officers work with development trusts and other community organisations within each of the 7 local action partnership areas to deliver participatory budgeting initiatives focused on climate change. I'm proposing the addition of the following words, which address the cost of living crisis. So that changes it from purely climate change to being climate change which address the cost of living crisis. So that's effectively what I'm proposing. As I say, I've tried to do that in the chat so that people can read it if they prefer. I don't know if I have a seconder or not.
Councillor Leishman.
I'll second Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you very much. Right, we have 3 amendments here, so I think we all have a recess so that I can discuss these amendments with the movers of them and see what we can come up with. Thank you very much. Thank you, members, and thank you for that open discussion there that we've just had. Do we need a point of clarity from Councillor Barrett? Is that still necessary?
Convener, if you should just clarify what the approach will be towards aggregation and disaggregation and how that question will be put to members, then I'm sure that'll satisfy me.
It's up to yourselves.
and therefore will the views of those members be sought in coming to the decision? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Good. Well, in which case I'm then happy to withdraw my amendment. I'm grateful to Councillor Cuthbert for being a seconder in extremis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So amendment 3 from Councillor Cuthbert, I think that wording change adds to the paper, so I'm willing to accept that as an amendment to the paper. And amendment 1 from Councillor Braun, do you have?
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and thanks for your input on this matter and the negotiation. I've spoken to Councillor James and we've spoken amongst ourselves. So we've agreed that, as you've said, that the first sentence of 5.2e stays. The rest is deleted apart from the last sentence, which now would read, this approach will be supported by directing applicants to locality profiles as a key source of information. So there's no mention of ward panel members in the paragraph. So thank you for your input on that. We're happy with that.
And I'm happy to accept that amendment to the papers as well. A seconder to the paper. Sheila McCall. Yeah, good. Yes.
So in paragraph.
Would you like me just to? Yep.
Sentence beginning with guidance.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. So it's just the first sentence and the last sentence, apart from and ward panel members in that last sentence.
Do we have any comments on the paper? Nobody wants to say how great this fund is and everything else. You're all hungry now. It is midday on the longest day. Yes. Are we happy to approve this paper as amended? Thank you very much, everybody, for your efforts today. It's been a challenging day, unusual one for us, but thank you very much. Thank you.